Fujiko has her eyes on a diamond chandelier set up for the Olympics guarded by the Kremlin. Thanks to the police being busy with handling the Olympics, Zenigata is brought on to help deal with Lupin. Lupin himself takes advantage of this to do some recon as Zenigata. He doesn't get far as Natasha, a Kremlin agent, sees right through his disguise. She then leads a team to Jigen and Goemon, who sensed them thanks to the Zantetsuken shadow. They toy with her but decide to comply for the moment. Lupin discovers a revolving wall in his cell that lands him in a meeting with an old man. He knows Fujiko, introducing himself as a jeweller who set up the chandelier. Having stolen a few diamonds already thanks to being the one to set it up, he tells Lupin they're attached to one long string. They then switch outfits and cells as the Kremlin come along to oversee the jeweller as he finishes the job, knowing Lupin will set up a way to steal it. Upon completing the chandelier, Lupin sends a message to Jigen by pigeon. He and Goemon are still under Kremlin watch, but take care of them upon Jigen using the shower as a signal. Zenigata is promised by the chief to broadcast Lupin's handing over to Interpol as part of the Olympic events. Jigen disguises as a construction worker delivering a special clear plastic gutter that he claims is to stop anything suspicious. He then contacts Lupin, handing him a fishing rod and places a bomb on his cell wall. The day of the opening ceremony arrives and the plan is set in motion. The bomb goes off, freeing Lupin and the jeweller, but the jeweller betrays him. The chandelier string is pulled away through the pipes and to a baseball launcher. Jigen and Goemon break free and Lupin informs them that Fujiko set them up. To find her, he uses the pigeon from earlier. Natasha turns out to be the jeweller's daughter, working with him and Fujiko to steal the diamonds. They only get a few as Lupin arrives and informs them that he intercepted the trajectory, with Jigen picking them up. A bit disjointed here and there, but it does come together at the end. On one hand, it feels a bit arbitrary for Natasha to be the daughter of the jeweller, but with that said, it does give the guy a means to sneak in and set up the operation in the first place. Once again a case of no honour among thieves, but the gang actually managed to get one over on Fujiko and get the target for themselves. On a boat in Istanbul, Jigen is enjoying a game of pool with Lord Weather, the owner of the champion horse Red Arrow. Meanwhile, Lupin is taking care of a crown but gets interrupted by Zenigata. Lupin makes his getaway, dealing with the outside guards with an army of fleas. Fujiko airlifts him out, but a seagull knocks her piloting off kilter. Lupin lands near Weather's ship and gets introduced to him by Jigen. Weather decides to challenge Lupin to steal Red Arrow. Zenigata is assigned to keep watch over the horse, and Lupin watches out for any openings. Red Arrow is moved to a plane, with Zenigata and Weather confident Lupin won't steal him. While they enjoy a poker game, Lupin lands his own plane on top of Weather's. Goemon cuts through and Lupin takes care of the stable hands. Riding the horse off the plane, he and Goemon parachute down to a waiting Jigen. Zenigata dives down to arrest Lupin, but Red Arrow's panicked kicking knocks him away. Unfortunately for Lupin, Red Arrow was another horse recoloured to trick him. Later, Lupin infiltrates Weather's mansion and interrupts a fox hunt. He then activates a magnetic device that pins Red Arrow down as well as Zenigata's police gear. He tells Weather he'll turn it off if he surrenders Red Arrow. In response, Weather summons security and has Lupin trapped in a net. Weather refuses to let Zenigata arrest Lupin, wanting to simply finish him off. Lupin retorts that he'll steal Red Arrow at the Grand National. Jigen and Goemon then arrive, rescuing Lupin under a smokescreen. The day of the Grand National arrives and Lupin lies in wait as Weather watches in the audience with Fujiko. On the final lap, Lupin opens a hurdle and Red Arrow falls in. Later, Fujiko returns to Lupin and discovers Red Arrow really likes his food. Zenigata tracks down the gang at a racetrack and demands Red Arrow be returned. Lupin says he's welcome, as his appetite got the better of him. We got a good back and forth rivalry between Lupin and Weather in this episode. Would have been nice to get a bit more on Weather and Jiggin's history too, as there seems to be some connection that they were hinting at but never fully established. Also worth noting is that the art department apparently took from Castle of Cagliostro's character design sheets for this episode as well as the next few, with it being noticeable through Weather himself bearing some resemblance to the Count as an example. Aside from that, lesson learned is if you need your horse to be cared for, don't ask Lupin to do it. The bank in Miami has, well, gone bankrupt. The manager has a plan for this, however. Lupin's enjoying some downtime with the rest of the gang. It's interrupted when the manager's assistant broadcasts that Lupin is set to rob the bank. As Lupin tries to figure out who sent a calling card, Zenigata is on him with his greatest fear in place of his usual handcuffs. Evading by disguising as a woman doesn't work, so Lupin digs underground. A man comes to Lupin with a phone call from the bank. The chase continues and the manager confronts Lupin in person. Lupin agrees to it if he gets rid of Zenigata. As the gang drive to the bank, Fujiko opts out. Jiggin also slipped away at some point. Upon arriving, Lupin and Goemon discover a huge parade set up for the robbery, which causes Goemon to opt out too. Going it alone, Lupin fires a drill with a tube attached to walk up to the bank unimpeded. The manager greets him and has him break a champagne bottle over their safe to open it. Zenigata's inside, with the manager elaborating that the bank is out of money and Lupin robbing it is to boost their profile. At this, Lupin escapes with the use of decoys. The manager's plan works, as customers flock to the bank. Lupin decides to counter, flying around and announcing he'll steal from the bank soon. Zenigata expresses concern, but the manager reassures him by showing off his new safe. It's equipped with lasers and also electrified, affecting anyone who damages it. Lupin meets with the gang and shows them the gear he has to open it without incident, the big part being a corrosive acid. The bank falls into crisis when the safe's code changes and isn't able to be reopened. Lupin comes in disguised as a maintenance worker, claiming he has the answer. As the gang arrive with high-power vacuums, Lupin uses the acid on the safe. The vacuum power sucks the money out of the safe and security is useless as they race for it. As the gang escape, the manager suddenly gets a wave of the press asking about Lupin and the robbery. Oddly enough, this gives the bank the prestige it wants. As payment, the manager offers Lupin a chance to rob it once a year, as well as Zenigata the chance to arrest him. Simple plot premise, but they have a lot of fun with it. A lot of visual gags, and you can't go wrong with the always reliable, uncrackable safe plot. Or not so reliable, as the case may be. Funny how Lupin's prestige actually manages to work in both the bank and the gang's favour in the end too. Lupin is preparing a meal for Fujiko's birthday. He gets interrupted by a pair of old men who help themselves to it. When Lupin tries to intervene, they end up humiliating him and wrecking the place. He surveys the damage alongside Goemon, wondering if he knows them from somewhere. Just then, Jiggin enters, telling him Fujiko was kidnapped by a pair of old men. Fujiko's been placed in the glass safe in the middle of a stadium as part of some big Lupin-focused event. The Premier of the nation has set it up in order to give the economy a boost, using the money thrown into the safe. The old men note that his assistant is a disguised Lupin, taking care of him quickly. Lupin escapes, but they tell the Premier that it doesn't matter as they've known him since he was a child. Lupin confirms this with the gang, identifying them as Nanja and Monja, two rival thieves that tangled with his grandfather back in the day. Jiggin has done some recon on the safe and discovers that there aren't any weaknesses. Lupin decides to check the safe out at night, but the audience is still watching. Nanja and Manja appear, goading Lupin into a fight. Zenigata interrupts, but gets escorted out as people want to fight. The gang proved too much for the safe's guards. Before Goemon can cut the safe open, Nanja and Manja warn that damaging it will set off the dynamite underneath them. The only way to open the safe is a Lupin-shaped lock that they designed using photos taken during their rampage earlier. Problem is, it has 1,000,000 volts running through it. The Premier is amused by the whole thing, but hesitates when Nanja and Manja ask for their payment. He offers double if they can keep stalling Lupin. They seem satisfied, but listen in and learn he doesn't intend to pay. Meanwhile, Lupin tries and fails to find a way to exploit the safe. It begins raining and a bolt of lightning gives Lupin an idea. Nanja and Manja also help themselves to the Premier's safe. The next day, Lupin heads back to the stadium, confident in his plan. After some struggling, he enters the Lupin lock. The safe opens and Fujiko mourns Lupin as he collapses. He survived, of course, possessing a device that has a battery that can store high amounts of electricity. The Premier has a group of men shoot at the gang, but Lupin takes care of them with the device. Nanja and Manja then take off with the money from the safe. They leave the gang a note saying they'll meet again in the village they plan to build with their earnings. It's been said before, but in Lupin's world, don't underestimate the elderly. Granted, I'm not sure I could take having these two appear as recurring characters, as they get a bit too much at times. Still, interesting to see at least a few characters that Arsene dealt with in the past, if nothing else. One also has to wonder how Lupin got that battery pack so quickly. Guess he's just resourceful that way. Next time, an air museum with the sinister secrets, a challenge from a child genius, a crystal mermaid, and a heist in a suspended safe room bring us to episode 148. Until then.